Millionaire CEO mocked his black EX at his own wedding. But she was with hidden twins who looked just like him 4 years ago. Connor Blake told her she was too hood for his rising tech empire. Today, she walked into his luxury wedding holding the hands of twin boys with his eyes, ready to collect on a debt long overdue. Do you believe people can truly change? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The Atlanta skyline glittered through their apartment window as Connor paced back and forth, his shadow stretching across the worn carpet. Kiera sat on their second-hand couch, nodding encouragingly as he rehearsed his investor pitch for the 10th time. "You've got this," she said, rising to straighten his tie, the one she'd saved 3 paychecks to buy him. "They'd be fools not to fund you." His eyes met hers, that familiar intensity making her heart skip. "We're so close, Key. Everything we've worked for. It's happening." The word hung between them, sweet and promising. For 3 years, it had been them against the world. Kiera working double shifts at the marketing firm to keep them afloat while Connor built his app. Her contacts, her connections, her late nights editing his business plan. Their shared dream. "When this hits," he whispered against her hair, "I'm taking you somewhere with a view better than this. Penthouse living, baby. No more counting pennies." Later that night, with the city lights painting patterns across their tangled bodies, Connor traced the curve of her hip with reverent fingers. "You're the only one who believed in me from day one," he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. Kiera wouldn't forget, but 2 weeks later, Connor would, along with everything else he promised. The morning after his successful pitch meeting, Connor didn't come home. His texts grew shorter, his excuses longer. Networking, he called it. Building the brand. Until the day she called and found his number disconnected. His things disappeared from their apartment in stages. First his laptop, then his favorite clothes, finally the small box of family photos he kept beside their bed. No note, no explanation, just gone. The last time she saw him was through a restaurant window downtown, laughing with men in expensive suits, his hand resting on the shoulder of a blonde woman who didn't look anything like Kiera, who didn't look anything like their neighborhood, their history, their plans. When Kiera pressed her face to the glass, Connor looked up. Their eyes met for one breathless moment. He didn't wave. He didn't come outside. He simply turned away, leaning closer to whisper something in the blonde's ear. That night, Kiera discovered that disappearing acts came in pairs. Connor vanished from Atlanta, and the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. She took 3 more tests, hands shaking, watching as each one confirmed what the first had declared. Pregnant, by a man who had erased her from his story with surgical precision. Her first instinct was to call him, to break through whatever wall he'd constructed between them. But pride stopped her fingers on the keypad. If you want to leave, fine. She wouldn't chase, wouldn't beg, wouldn't become the stereotype of an abandoned black woman pleading for a man to acknowledge his responsibilities. Instead, she made an appointment with her doctor, applied for a promotion at work, and began researching childcare options. One life was ending, the life where she was Connor's girlfriend, his cheerleader, his safety net. Another was beginning. Have you ever given your all to someone who discarded you when something better came along? That moment when you realize your forever was just their stepping stone? When the pregnancy test showed positive 2 weeks after Connor disappeared, Kiera made 2 promises. She would never beg a man to love his children, and someday he would face what he'd done, not in private, but in front of everyone who believed his carefully crafted lies. The day Connor Blake changed his number and vanished from Atlanta was the day Kiera discovered she was carrying twins, a secret she kept buried until the perfect moment to resurrect it. "There's your baby," the technician said, moving the ultrasound wand across Kiera's still flat stomach. And oh, there's another heartbeat. The room tilted sideways. 2 heartbeats, 2 babies, and 0 fathers in sight. "Twins," Kiera whispered, the word foreign on her tongue. The technician smiled, oblivious to the war raging inside her patient. "Congratulations. Would you like me to print extra photos for the father?" Kiera stared at the ceiling, counting the speckled tiles to keep from crying. No, there's no father in the picture. That night, she tried Connor's number 1 last time. The automated voice informed her it was no longer in service. His email bounced back. His social media had been scrubbed of any photos featuring her. The only evidence they'd ever been together existed in her camera roll, and now, growing inside her body. Her mother noticed her quietness over Sunday dinner. "Baby girl, what's wrong? And where's that boy of yours?" Kiera pushed her food around the plate. "Connor moved to Austin, got funding for his app. Without you? After everything you did for him?" Kiera nodded, throat tight. Her mother set down her fork. "You're better than chasing after some man who can't see your worth." "I'm not chasing him," Kiera said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm done chasing anyone." What she didn't say, "I'm pregnant. With twins. His twins." She kept the pregnancy private, deleted her social media, and threw herself into work. While her body expanded, she built walls around her heart, brick by brick, memory by memory. When coworkers asked about her growing belly, she gave the simplest answer: their father isn't involved. At night, alone in bed, she watched Connor's star rise through business news alerts. His company secured another round of funding. He gave interviews about being a self-made entrepreneur who sacrificed everything for success. His face appeared on local business magazines, then national ones. Not once did he mention the woman who had edited his pitch decks, connected him with her college friends and venture capital, who had believed in him when his own family called his ideas worthless. What would you do if the person who promised you forever disappeared when you needed them most? Would you chase them or build something new? In her 8th month, Kiera found herself unable to sleep, scrolling through Connor's latest interview. "I had to cut out distractions," he told the reporter. "Atlanta had too many temptations that weren't aligned with my vision." Kiera shut her laptop, hands shaking. Distractions. Temptations. 3 years of her life, reduced to obstacles he'd overcome. The delivery room felt too bright, too loud, too empty of the one person who should have been there holding her hand. 16 hours of labor later, she heard the first cry, then the second. 2 healthy boys, the doctor announced, placing the squirming bundles on her chest. Kiera stared at their tiny faces, Connor's nose, her lips, his dark eyes. Proof of what they'd been, despite his attempts to erase it. As Connor's tech company made headlines, Kiera gave birth alone. Her hospital room empty of flowers, but full of resolve. She named the boys Marcus and Mason. Strong names for boys who would never know the weakness of abandonment. Even as their father's face smiled from magazine covers claiming he built everything from nothing. While Connor Blake built his empire on stolen ideas and convenient lies, Kiera built something more powerful. A life where her boys would never need the man who didn't want them. "Mommy, look." 3-year-old Mason held up a drawing, stick figures standing in front of what looked like a house. "That's you, me, Marcus, and Grandma." Kiera knelt down, taking the picture with exaggerated care. "It's beautiful, baby. We'll put it right here." She pinned it to her office wall, next to her marketing agency's first major client contract. From the playpen in the corner, Marcus babbled in agreement, dark eyes, Connor's eyes, watching everything. 3 years had transformed her apartment's 2nd bedroom into a home office where Kiera built her marketing consultancy from scratch. While the twins napped, she pitched clients. While they played, she created campaigns. While they slept, she studied business courses online. The boys never asked about their father. Not yet. But Kiera kept a file growing in her desk drawer. Birth certificates with the father's name blank, DNA samples preserved, and printouts of every interview where Connor Blake rewrote their history. She dated occasionally, a lawyer who called the twins little buddies, a teacher who brought them books, a doctor who wanted more children. Each relationship ended the same way, with Kiera pulling back, her body responding to memories more than present touch. "You're still hung up on their dad," her friend Zara said over wine one night after the twins were asleep. "I'm not hung up on Connor," Kiera insisted. "I'm focused on the boys." "Then why do you keep that folder of his press clippings?" "Evidence," Kiera said, swirling her wine. "Not sentiment." But she couldn't explain why she still watched his interviews, noting how success had changed him. The designer clothes, the polished accent that hid any trace of their shared neighborhood, the easy confidence of a man who believed his own mythology. In his latest feature in Tech Innovators, Connor claimed he'd started with nothing but determination and vision. The photo showed him in his Austin office, arm around a willowy blonde woman identified as Vanessa Mercer, VP of Operations and fiancée. Kiera closed the browser, her finger hovering over the delete button. Instead, she added the article to her growing file. 6 months later, her own business began to take off. A campaign she designed for a local restaurant chain went viral, leading to bigger clients, a small office downtown, and the luxury of hiring childcare help. The twins started preschool, thriving in an environment filled with other children. Each milestone they reached, first words, first steps, first day of school, Kiera documented meticulously. Not just in the baby books on her shelf, but in a separate digital folder labeled for later. For when the boys asked questions she couldn't answer alone. For when they deserved to know the full truth. For when Connor Blake would finally have to acknowledge what he'd abandoned. She never planned to pursue him for child support. Her pride wouldn't allow it. But fate has a way of offering opportunities when you least expect them. How do you rebuild yourself after someone tries to erase you from their story? Drop a comment if you've ever had to reinvent yourself after betrayal. The wedding invitation wasn't meant for her. It arrived at her best friend Zara's mailbox, addressed to Zara Williams and guest, complete with a QR code for the live stream. As Kiera stared at Connor's smiling face beside his blonde fiancée, something crystallized in her chest. The DNA test results had arrived that morning. The timing wasn't coincidence, it was opportunity. Some women burn wedding invitations when their ex moves on. Kiera used one to orchestrate the most elegant revenge ever served on a silver platter. "You can't be serious," Zara said, watching Kiera examine the embossed invitation. "You're actually thinking of going?" Kiera traced Connor's printed name with her fingertip. "Not just thinking about it. It's insane. You haven't seen him in 4 years. You can't just show up at his wedding with." Zara's eyes widened. "Oh my God. The twins. You're taking the twins." Kiera placed the invitation on her kitchen counter, next to the envelope that had arrived that morning. Inside, DNA test results proving Connor Blake was the father of Marcus and Mason with 99.99% certainty. "He made me a footnote in his story," Kiera said quietly. "Worse, he erased me completely. But there are 2 footnotes he can't erase." The next morning, Kiera stood in front of her bedroom mirror, sliding the royal blue dress over her curves. 4 years of motherhood had changed her body, stronger now, more defined. The dress hugged her waist, flared gently over her hips, stopping just below her knees. Conservative enough for a wedding, bold enough for a statement. "You look like a princess, Mommy," Marcus said from her doorway, his dinosaur pajamas rumpled from sleep. Kiera smiled, turning to examine her profile. "Thank you, baby. Mommy needs to look perfect for a special day coming up." Special indeed. The countdown had begun. 16 days until Connor Blake's wedding to Vanessa Mercer, tech heiress and daughter of his biggest investor. 16 days to prepare for the moment 4 years in the making. That evening, after tucking the twins into bed, Kiera spread her supplies across the kitchen table. Tiny tuxedos ordered rush delivery, plane tickets to Austin, hotel reservation, and a sealed manila envelope containing the DNA results and child support calculations dating back to her pregnancy. Her hand trembled slightly as she programmed the courthouse address into her phone. Tomorrow she would file for formal paternity acknowledgement and back support. Not because she needed Connor's money now, but because the filing would create an official record, evidence that couldn't be denied. She caught her reflection in the dark kitchen window, determination replacing the heartbreak that had lived in her eyes for years. "Mommy." Mason stood in the doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "I had a bad dream." Kiera quickly gathered the papers, sliding them into a drawer before lifting her son. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." As she rocked him back to sleep, doubt crept in. Was she doing this for the boys or for herself? Was this justice or revenge dressed in righteousness? Both, she decided. Both were true. The twins deserved to know their father, and Connor deserved to face what he'd done. The public humiliation was just interest on an overdue debt. What would you wear to confront the person who thought you weren't good enough? How would you prepare to face someone who erased you from their story? The night before the wedding, she sat the twins down, showing them Connor's picture. "Remember what we practiced?" she asked gently. Mason nodded solemnly, while Marcus grinned. "We say hello to the man in the picture, give the paper to Grandma, and stay quiet," they recited. What she didn't tell them: the man in the picture was their father, and tomorrow, his perfect new beginning would collide with the past he thought he'd buried. Connor Blake stood at the altar in a $12,000 tuxedo, promising forever to another woman, unaware that his past was seated in the back row, holding DNA results that would rewrite his carefully constructed narrative. The Mercer estate transformed for the occasion. Manicured gardens dotted with white tents, champagne flowing from crystal fountains, 300 guests in designer attire representing the elite of tech wealth and Austin society. String quartets played as waiters circulated with silver trays of appetizers that cost more than Kiera's monthly grocery budget. Kiera slipped in during the seating confusion, the twins' small hands clasped tightly in hers. Their matching tuxedos and solemn expressions drew smiles from guests who assumed they belonged to someone important. They did. "Remember, be quiet like we practiced," she whispered, settling them in seats near the back, close to an exit if needed, but with a clear view of the altar where Connor stood, jaw tight with anticipation. The bride appeared in a cloud of white, floating down the aisle on her father's arm. Kiera studied Vanessa Mercer, delicate features, champagne blonde hair, skin that had never seen hardship. Everything Kiera wasn't. Everything Connor had decided he needed to complete his transformation. As vows were exchanged, Mason leaned against Kiera's arm, eyes heavy with boredom. Marcus stared at Connor, head tilted in that way that always reminded Kiera of their father. Observing, calculating, recognizing patterns others missed. "You look like him," she whispered to Marcus, too softly for anyone to hear. The boy smiled, innocent of the weight behind her words. "The man in the picture?" Kiera nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, baby. The man in the picture." The ceremony concluded with applause, the couple beaming as they processed down the aisle. Connor passed within 10 feet of where Kiera sat with the twins, his eyes sweeping over the crowd without seeing her, without seeing his sons. For now, the reception began in the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers reflecting off marble floors as guests found their tables. Kiera positioned herself near the back wall, the twins sitting quietly with tablets she'd loaded with their favorite games. "Ladies and gentlemen," the best man announced, "please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Connor Blake." The crowd erupted as Connor and his bride entered, her diamond-encrusted gown catching light from every angle. They looked like royalty, untouchable and perfect, until Connor took the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he said, voice confident from years of investor pitches. "Some of you knew me when I was nothing, just a guy from Atlanta with big dreams and empty pockets." Kiera's grip tightened on her clutch. "I had to make tough choices to get here," Connor continued. "Leave certain things behind. Cut ties that were holding me back." The crowd chuckled appreciatively. "Let's just say I dodged some bullets to find my queen," he added, raising his glass toward Vanessa. "Here's to leaving the past where it belongs and building a future worth having." The room filled with applause. Kiera stood frozen, each word a knife twisting deeper. She'd planned to wait to approach Connor's mother privately with the DNA results. A dignified exchange, away from cameras and crowds. But his speech changed everything. "Mommy," Marcus tugged her sleeve. "Is it time to give the paper to the grandma?" Kiera looked down at her sons. These perfect boys with Connor's eyes and smile. These living proofs of his lies. They deserved more than to be secrets. "Change of plans," she whispered, taking their hands. "We're going to say hello to the man in the picture first." Across the room, Connor's mother stood near the head table, A woman in her 60s with expertly colored hair and a face that had seen more plastic surgeons than emotions. Eleanor Blake, according to Kiera's research. A woman who'd raised her son to climb social ladders at any cost. Have you ever been in a room where you were the secret no one knew was about to explode? What does it feel like to hold that kind of power? When Connor took the microphone and laughed about leaving Atlanta and certain distractions behind to find success, something shifted in Kiera's chest. This wasn't just about child support anymore. Standing slowly, she took her son's hands and began walking toward the mother of the groom, the envelope heavy in her clutch. The livestream cameras swiveled to follow her movement, capturing the exact moment Connor's smile froze mid-sentence as he recognized her face. The most expensive wedding in Austin came to a standstill when Kiera approached the mother of the groom, two miniature versions of Connor holding her hands, and whispered 5 words that silenced the room. "These are your grandsons, Eleanor." The music continued playing, but the conversation stopped. Glasses froze midair. The bride's cream-colored gown suddenly looked stark against her paling skin as she gripped the edge of the head table. Eleanor Blake stared at the twins, her perfectly lined lips parting in shock. The resemblance was undeniable. The same dark eyes, the same jawline, the same way Marcus tilted his head when curious. Exactly like Connor had done as a child. "I don't understand," Eleanor managed, her voice barely audible over the string quartet. "Who are you?" "I'm Kiera Davis. The distraction from Atlanta your son mentioned in his speech." Kiera's voice remained steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "And these are Marcus and Mason, your grandsons." Connor appeared beside his mother, his face drained of color. "Kiera, what are you doing here?" "Introducing your sons to their grandmother," she replied, meeting his gaze directly for the first time in 4 years. "Since you never bothered to," the wedding planner rushed forward, trying to usher them toward a side door. "Please, this is a private event. Let them stay," Eleanor said suddenly, her eyes never leaving the twins' faces. Mason, always the shy one, pressed against Kiera's leg. Marcus, however, stared up at Connor with open curiosity. "You're the man from Mommy's pictures," he announced. Connor swallowed hard, looking from the boy to Kiera. "This isn't, you can't just," he lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "These can't be mine. We were careful." "Not careful enough," Kiera replied, opening her clutch and extracting the envelope. "And not your choice to make anymore." By now, guests had formed a loose circle around them, smartphones raised to capture the drama. The livestream camera operator had abandoned his fixed position to focus on this unexpected scene. Vanessa appeared at Connor's side, her wedding gown rustling. "Connor, what's happening? Who is this woman?" Before he could answer, Kiera handed the envelope to Eleanor. "DNA results. Court certified. I filed for paternity recognition yesterday." As security approached, Eleanor Blake opened the envelope with trembling fingers, her gasp audible through the silent ballroom. "Connor James Blake," she read aloud, her voice carrying to the live stream microphones, 99.99% probability of paternity. The bride's bouquet hit the marble floor with a soft thud as she turned to the man she'd just married and whispered, "Who exactly did I just say yes to?" Connor's face contorted, anger replacing shock. "You planned this," he hissed at Kiera. "You deliberately ruined my wedding." "No, quiero replay. You ruined it when you stood up there and called me a distraction. When you pretended the past 4 years were built on nothing but your own brilliance." She knelt down to the twins' level. "Boys, say hello to your father." The word father rippled through the crowd. Phones flashed. Whispers grew louder. "This is inappropriate," Connor's best man interjected, stepping between them. "There are proper channels for this kind of claim." "I tried proper channels," Kiera said, rising to her full height. "For 4 years. Every email bounced. Every letter returned. Every call blocked." Eleanor Blake suddenly reached for Mason's small hand. The boy hesitated, then allowed her to take it. "They have your eyes," she said to Connor, her voice breaking. "Your exact eyes." The bride backed away, her wedding dress whispering across the marble floor. "You told me you never wanted children," she said to Connor, tears streaming down her face. "Was that a lie too?" Connor stood frozen between his past and his present, both crumbling before him. The perfect image he'd constructed, self-made tech genius, devoted fiancé, man without baggage, shattered with each passing second. "I think," Eleanor said finally, "we should continue this conversation privately." She turned to the wedding planner. "Please inform our guests there will be a brief intermission. Have you ever had a moment of perfect justice after being wronged? Was it as satisfying as you imagined, or more complicated?" As security approached, Kiera took the twins' hands. "We said what we came to say." She looked directly at Connor. "You know where to find us when you're ready to be a father." She turned to leave, head high, the boys matching her stride. Behind her, she heard the bride sob, Connor's attempted explanation, the rising murmur of 300 guests witnessing the implosion of a perfect day. Outside, camera flashes exploded like lightning as Kiera buckled the twins into her car, her hands steady despite the hurricane she'd just unleashed inside. Her phone rang at midnight. Connor's mother, not Connor himself. "I want to meet them properly," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "And there's something you should know about my son that might explain, though not excuse, what he did to you." The revelation that followed would change Kiera's understanding of the past 4 years and complicate her perfect revenge. The wedding hashtag Blake Forever trended for reasons no one anticipated. 3 million views of a bride walking out, a groom confronted with twins he denied, and a woman who waited 4 years to serve truth on his most important day. Kiera's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications from every social platform flooded in. Friend requests, message requests, interview requests from gossip blogs and morning shows. The video had gone viral overnight. Clips spreading across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram with captions like "Tech CEO's secret family crashes wedding" and "Karma comes in pairs." Twin boys reveal billionaire dad's lies. She turned her phone off, focusing instead on getting the twins ready for bed in their hotel room. "Did we do good, Mommy?" Mason asked as she buttoned his pajama top. Kiera hesitated. Had they done good? The plan had worked perfectly. Too perfectly, perhaps. The public humiliation had been complete. But seeing the shock on the twins' faces when people started shouting, when security approached, when the bride began crying, that hadn't been part of the plan. "You did exactly what Mommy asked," she said finally, kissing his forehead. "Now it's time for sleep." Once the boys were tucked in, Kiera stepped onto the hotel balcony, finally turning her phone back on. 57 missed calls, hundreds of messages, and one text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Room 1542. Connor." She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to let him stew in the mess he'd created. But another part, the part that had once loved him, the part that had raised his children alone, knew this conversation was inevitable. 20 minutes later, she knocked on his door. Connor opened it immediately, as if he'd been waiting by the entrance. Gone was the polished groom from earlier. His tie hung loose around his neck, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. "You could have contacted me privately," he said without preamble. "You didn't have to destroy my wedding." "Like you contacted me privately when you left?" Kiera stepped past him into the suite. "Or when you found out I was pregnant?" "Oh wait, you changed your number and disappeared." Connor closed the door, leaning against it. "I didn't know you were pregnant." "Liar." "I'm not lying. I left because..." He stopped, rubbing his face. "It doesn't matter why I left. What matters is what happens now." "Now?" Kiera laughed, the sound hollow. "Now you're trending on every platform. Now your perfect bride knows you abandoned your children. Now your investors are probably questioning every word you've ever said." "They're not just my children," Connor snapped. "They're ours. And you kept them from me for 4 years. I kept nothing from you. You knew where I lived. You knew my email. You chose to erase me." They stared at each other across the hotel room, for years of unspoken words hanging between them. Vanessa left, Connor said finally. "Called off the marriage. Her father's threatening to pull his investment." "That sounds like a you problem." "It's an us problem if it affects child support." Kiera's eyes narrowed. "I don't want your money. I never did. I wanted you to acknowledge them, to stop pretending they don't exist." Connor moved to the minibar, pouring himself a drink with shaking hands. My mother wants to meet them. Properly, not in the middle of a wedding disaster. I know. She called me. His head snapped up. She called you? When? About an hour ago. Kiera sat on the edge of the sofa. She told me about your father. Connor's face hardened. She had no right. She had every right. History repeating itself isn't just your tragedy, Connor. It's my reality. It's the twins' future. Have you ever had a moment of perfect justice after being wronged? Was it as satisfying as you imagined, or more complicated? Outside the hotel room, the world was dissecting their drama, creating memes and hot takes from the most painful moment of their lives. But here in this quiet space, there were just two people who had once loved each other, now connected forever by two small boys sleeping across the hall. Her phone rang at midnight. Connor's mother, not Connor himself. I want to meet them properly, Eleanor said, her voice breaking. And there's something you should know about my son that might explain, though not excuse, what he did to you. The revelation that followed would change Kiera's understanding of the past 4 years and complicate her perfect revenge. Behind every man who abandons his family lies a story, not an excuse, but a wound that bleeds onto everyone he touches. Eleanor Blake's penthouse occupied the top floor of Austin's most exclusive high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a city view that probably cost more than Kiera's entire apartment building. Crystal vases and modern art adorned every surface, but family photos were noticeably absent, a home designed to impress rather than comfort. "Thank you for coming," Eleanor said, ushering Kiera to a white leather sofa that looked too pristine for actual use. "The boys are with their father?" "They're with my mother," Kiera corrected. "Connor isn't ready for solo time yet." Eleanor nodded, her perfectly manicured hands fidgeting with her pearl necklace. "I understand your caution. After what he did." "After what he did," Kiera repeated, "I'm surprised you want anything to do with us." "They're my grandsons." Eleanor's voice softened. "My only grandchildren." And seeing them yesterday, she paused, composing herself. They're the spitting image of Connor at that age, especially the way the taller one. Marcus, the way he tilts his head when he's curious. Connor did the exact same thing. Kiera remained silent, waiting. She hadn't come for small talk about genetic resemblances. Eleanor seemed to sense her impatience. "What I need to tell you about Connor, about our family, isn't easy." She rose, crossing to a small bar cart. "Would you like something to drink?" "I'm Fina. Please, just tell me what was so important we needed to meet in person." Eleanor poured herself a generous measure of amber liquid, took a long sip, then turned to face Kiera. "Connor was 12 when his father left us. James Blake. Successful investment banker, pillar of the community, devoted family man. Until the day he wasn't." Kiera shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, but how does this?" "James had another family," Eleanor continued. "A woman in Chicago. 2 daughters Connor never knew existed. We found out when the woman showed up at our door, pregnant with their 3rd child, after James disappeared with our savings." The parallel wasn't lost on Kiera, so Connor repeated his father's pattern, just in reverse. "He swore he never would," Eleanor said, her voice hollow. "He watched what it did to me. The humiliation, the financial struggle, the whispers. He promised he'd never put a woman through that. Yet here we are." The twins had practiced meeting Mommy's friend for days. No one prepared them for the man who entered the park looking exactly like the reflection they saw in the mirror every morning. The Code playground bustled with weekend activity. Children climbing on colorful structures shaped like computer keys, parents clutching coffee cups while supervising from nearby benches. Kiera had chosen this spot deliberately, public, neutral, with plenty of witnesses and easy exits. "Remember what we talked about?" she said, adjusting Mason's collar as they waited. "This is Mommy's friend who wants to meet you." "The man from the wedding?" Marcus asked, always too perceptive for his age. "Yes, baby. The man from the wedding." Mason clutched his dinosaur toy tighter. "Why does he want to meet us?" Before Kiera could answer, Connor appeared at the park entrance. Gone was the polished CEO in designer suits. Today he wore jeans, sneakers, and a plain blue button-down, an outfit deliberately chosen to appear approachable, unthreatening. The twins noticed him immediately, their little bodies tensing beside her. "That's him," Marcus whispered, pointing. "He looks like us." Connor approached slowly, as if they were wild animals that might bolt. His eyes, the same deep brown the twins had inherited, darted nervously between the boys and Kiera. "Hi," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm Connor." The twins stared, silent and evaluating. Mason edged closer to Kiera's leg, while Marcus took a half-step forward, curiosity winning over caution. "I'm Marcus," he announced. "I'm 4. This is Mason. He's 4 too. It's nice to meet you both," Connor said, his voice catching slightly. He glanced at Kiera, seeking guidance. She nodded toward the code playground. The boys were about to try the slide. "Weren't you guys?" Mason shook his head, but Marcus grabbed his brother's hand. "Come on, race you." As the twins ran toward the equipment, Connor exhaled shakily. "They're incredible." "Yes, they are. Marcus is the leader." "Usually, Mason's more cautious, but he's actually the problem solver." Marcus jumps in first. Mason figures out how to make things work. Connor watched them climb, his expression a mixture of wonder and grief. "I've missed so much." "Yes, you have." They stood in awkward silence, two people connected by blood and history, but separated by choices that couldn't be undone. "Thank you," Connor said finally, "for letting me meet them. I'm not doing it for you." "I know." The twins reached the top of the slide, Mason hesitating at the edge. Connor stepped forward instinctively, then stopped himself, looking to Kiera for permission. "Go ahead," she said, "but don't push." Connor approached the slide, calling up to Mason. "Need some help, buddy?" Mason studied this stranger with his own eyes, looking back at him. "It's hot." "It is pretty high," Connor agreed. "Want me to catch you at the bottom?" A small nod. "I promise I won't let you fall." As Mason slid down, squealing with delight into Connor's waiting arms, Kiera felt something twist in her chest. The ease with which he lifted the boy, the natural way Mason's small hands gripped Connor's shoulders, biology recognizing biology despite years of absence. For the next hour, Connor followed the twins' lead, pushing swings, examining rocks they discovered, admiring Mason's dinosaur with appropriate awe. He never pushed, never tried to force connection, simply made himself available for whatever interaction they offered. Kiera noticed how motherhood had changed her body, finding her more attractive now than before. His eyes lingered when he thought she wasn't looking, not with the entitled desire of their past, but with something more complex. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of what he'd thrown away. What would you do if you had to introduce your children to someone who abandoned them before birth? How would you protect their hearts while allowing them to form their own opinions? As Connor knelt to help Mason with a shoelace, a gesture so natural it appeared practiced, Marcus looked up at Kiera with confusion in his eyes. "Mommy, why does he look like us?" The question silenced both adults, the truth hovering unspoken between them. Whatever answer she gave would change her son's understanding of their world forever. Connor Blake had built a billion-dollar empire convincing people to invest in his vision. Now he was making the most important pitch of his life to the woman he'd once discarded. His lawyer's office screamed old money and discretion. Leather-bound books lining mahogany shelves, oil paintings of stern-faced men in dark suits, chairs designed to impress rather than comfort. A stark contrast to the community legal aid office where Kiera had once sought help filing for child support. "Ms. Davis, thank you for meeting us," the lawyer said, extending his hand. His watch probably cost more than Kiera's car. "Let's get to the point," she replied, setting her own lawyer's business card on the table. "I have to pick up the twins in an hour." Connor sat across from her, tension visible in the set of his shoulders. 2 weeks had passed since the code playground meeting. 2 weeks of carefully supervised visits, of the twins slowly warming to this stranger who shared their features, of Kiera watching every interaction with guarded eyes. "We've prepared a comprehensive support and co-parenting agreement," Connor's lawyer began, sliding a thick document across the table. "Mr. Blake is proposing full financial responsibility, including back support for the past 4 years, educational trusts, healthcare, and housing allowance. Kiera glanced at the figures and fought to keep her expression neutral. The monthly amount was more than she made in a year. Additionally, the lawyer continued, Mr. Blake is proposing a visitation schedule beginning with supervised visits and progressing to overnight stays once the children are comfortable. And what does Mr. Blake want in return? Kiera asked, looking directly at Connor rather than his lawyer. What's the catch? Connor leaned forward. No catch, just my sons and my life. And your company? Your board? Your investors? They're suddenly fine with your complicated family situation? A muscle twitched in Connor's jaw. I restructure my role. Step back from being the public face. The company will survive. Just like that, after everything you sacrificed to build it. I sacrificed the wrong things, Connor said quietly. I'm trying to fix that. The professional setting highlighted their different worlds, yet underlying attraction remained, an inconvenient awareness that neither acknowledged but both felt. The way he straightened his tie when she entered the room. The way her eyes lingered on his hands as he signed documents. There's one more thing, Connor said, nodding to his lawyer, who produced another document. I'd like to establish a foundation. 4 single parents pursuing education or entrepreneurship, with you as the director. Kiera frowned. I don't need a charity job. It's not charity. It's recognition of expertise. You built a business while raising twins alone. That's exactly the perspective the foundation needs. The offer hung between them. Tempting, complicated, loaded with implications. Why? Kiera asked finally. Why all this? The money, the foundation, the career opportunity? Is this guilt? Image rehabilitation? What? Connor dismissed his lawyer with a nod. When the door closed, leaving them alone, he exhaled slowly. When I left Atlanta, I was running from everything. My background, my father's legacy, my fear of failing. I thought success would fix it all. He laughed bitterly. 4 years and $1 billion later, I'm still the same scared kid who saw a positive pregnancy test and bolted. That doesn't answer my question. I'm doing this because when I saw them, Marcus and Mason, I saw every mistake I've ever made. Every choice that led me away from what actually matters. His eyes met hers, direct and unguarded. And I saw you, the woman who built what I was too afraid to help create. The parenting plan lay between them, terms more generous than any court would mandate. Why now? Kiera finally asked. Your wedding's canceled, your reputation's in shambles. Are we your redemption project or your actual priority? His answer came with unexpected rawness. Because when I saw them, I saw every mistake I've ever made and every chance I never took. And I saw you, the woman who built what I was too afraid to help create. How do you balance protecting yourself from someone who hurt you while allowing them to make amends? Is redemption possible after abandonment? I'll need my lawyer to review everything, Kiera said, gathering the documents. And the foundation idea, I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. As she stood to leave, Connor remained seated, watching her with eyes so like their son's. Kiera, he said softly, thank you for raising them, for being what I couldn't. She paused at the door. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's what makes you extraordinary. Blending 2 worlds is never seamless, especially when one world was built on denying the other existed. Sunday dinner at Kiera's grandmother's house placed Connor at a table surrounded by 3 generations of women who had helped raise his sons. Their scrutiny more intimidating than any boardroom of investors he'd ever faced. So, Grandma Esther said, passing Connor a plate of cornbread, you finally decided to show up. The table fell silent. Kiera's mother froze mid-pour with the sweet tea. Her cousin Tanya suddenly found the pattern on her plate fascinating. The twins, oblivious to the tension, continued building towers with their mashed potatoes. Yes, ma'am, Connor replied, accepting the cornbread with appropriate reverence. Better late than never, I hope. Grandma Esther's eyes narrowed behind her glasses. We'll see about that. 3 months had passed since the wedding disaster. 3 months of lawyers, agreements, supervised visits, and careful navigation of new boundaries. Connor had rented a house in Kiera's neighborhood. Not too close, but near enough for regular visits. He'd established a remote work arrangement with his company, flying to Austin only when absolutely necessary. The transition hadn't been smooth. The twins still called him Connor, not Daddy. Mason still hid behind Kiera when Connor arrived for visits. The company stock had stabilized, but remained below its pre-wedding value. And Kiera kept her walls firmly in place, cordial but distant. "Marcus, baby, eat your greens," Kiera's mother instructed, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "Connor doesn't have to eat greens," Marcus observed, eyeing Connor's plate. All eyes turned to Connor's vegetable-free plate. He quickly speared a large helping of collards. "Actually, I love greens." See, he took a deliberate bite, fighting to keep his expression neutral as the unfamiliar bitterness hit his tongue. Kiera hid a smile behind her napkin. "Good, aren't they?" Grandma Esther asked innocently. "Special recipe." "Delicious," Connor managed, reaching for his water glass. By dessert, the atmosphere had softened slightly. Connor had passed the first test. Showing up, being respectful, eating everything offered without complaint. The second test came when the twins grew restless. "Why don't you take the boys out back?" Kiera suggested. "They need to run off some energy before the drive home." Connor looked panicked for a moment. Solo responsibility still new territory, but nodded. "Sure. Come on, guys. Race you to the swing." As soon as they left, the women closed ranks. "He seems trying," Kiera's mother offered cautiously. "Trying doesn't make up for 4 years," Tanya countered. "No, it doesn't," Grandma Esther agreed. "But those boys need a father, not just child support checks." Kiera watched through the window as Connor pushed the twins on the old tire swing. His designer shoes now dusty from the yard, his careful haircut mussed by the breeze. There was something both right and wrong about seeing him there, like a puzzle piece that fit the shape but didn't quite match the picture. Growing attraction as they witnessed each other in parental roles made everything more complicated. The way Connor's face softened when Mason finally reached for his hand without prompting. The competence in his movements as he bandaged Marcus's scraped knee. The patience he showed explaining cloud formations during a backyard picnic. These glimpses of the father, he could have been made it harder to remember the man who had left. "He's trying to buy his way back in," Tanya said later, helping Kiera load dishes into the dishwasher. The fancy foundation, the house in the neighborhood, the expensive gifts for the boys. "I know," Kiera sighed, "but he's also showing up. Every day, even when it's awkward. Even when Mason won't talk to him. Even when my family treats him like he's on trial." "Because he is on trial," Tanya insisted. "And the jury's still out." When photos of Connor with the twins hit social media, his investors called an emergency meeting. His company stock plummeting as the narrative shifted from abandoned family to hidden black children. As Kiera watched him field crisis calls, a realization dawned. The very image problem he'd once discarded her to avoid was now unavoidable. The question wasn't whether he'd stay this time, but whether his newfound commitment could withstand the same pressures that had broken them before. Have you ever had to reintegrate someone into your life after they hurt you? How did you protect your boundaries while opening your heart? "Mommy, is Connor our daddy?" Marcus asked that night as Kiera tucked him into bed. The question she'd been dreading. The question she'd known was coming. "Why do you ask that, baby?" "Because Tommy at school said he must be our daddy because we look the same. And because daddies take you to the park and push you on swings. Connor does that." Kiera sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Yes, Connor is your daddy. He's been away for a long time, but now he wants to be part of our family." "Why was he away?" "That's a grown-up story for another time," Kiera said, kissing his forehead. "What matters is that he's here now. Will he go away again?" The question hung in the darkness, echoing Kiera's own deepest fear. The same tech world that embraced Connor's carefully crafted image now questioned everything about him, forcing him to choose between the empire he built and the family he abandoned. The press conference podium stood empty for 3 excruciating minutes before Connor appeared, not in his usual tailored suit, but in casual clothes that matched what he'd worn to the park with his sons, a deliberate visual statement about his priorities. Camera flashes exploded as he approached the microphone. 6 months after the wedding disaster, the story still had legs, especially now that Connor Blake, tech wunderkind and Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, had called this press conference himself. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady despite the visible tension in his shoulders. "I've spent 4 years crafting a narrative about who Connor Blake is: self-made entrepreneur, visionary founder, overnight success. Today, I'm here to correct that narrative." In the back of the room, Kiera watched, arms crossed, still uncertain why Connor had asked her to come. They'd established a workable co-parenting routine. The twins were adjusting to Connor's presence in their lives. The legal agreements were finalized. What more could this public confession add? 4 years ago, Connor continued, "I abandoned my pregnant girlfriend when investors offered to fund my company. I changed my number, moved states, and pretended she never existed. I built my success on that abandonment, positioning myself as a young bachelor entrepreneur with no attachments, no distractions." Murmurs rippled through the assembled press. "I didn't know she was carrying twins. I didn't know she raised our sons alone while I collected magazine covers and funding rounds. I didn't know because I chose not to know." Connor gripped the podium edges, knuckles white. "I'm not asking for sympathy or understanding. I'm simply stating facts that should have been part of my company's story from the beginning. Blake Tech was built on a foundation of privilege. Not just financial privilege, but the privilege of walking away from responsibilities that women can't escape." The room had gone completely silent. Moving forward, Blake Tech will implement new policies supporting working parents, including on-site childcare, extended parental leave, and flexible scheduling. Additionally, I'm stepping down as CEO to focus on our new foundation supporting single parents in tech. Gasps and furious typing filled the room. "I'll take a few questions now." Hands shot up across the room. Connor pointed to a reporter in the front row. "Is this announcement related to your company's recent stock decline?" "Our stock declined because I lied to investors, to the public, and to myself. This announcement is about correcting those lies." Another reporter stood. "Are you still involved with the mother of your children?" Connor's eyes found Kiera in the back of the room. "Ms. Davis and I are co-parenting our sons. Any other relationship between us is private." The questions continued, about the company's future, about the twins, about the canceled wedding. Connor answered each one directly, without the polished evasions that had characterized his previous press appearances. As the conference ended, Kiera slipped out a side door, needing space to process what she'd witnessed. Connor had just sacrificed the image he'd spent 4 years building, the very image he'd abandoned her to create. He found her in the parking garage, leaning against her car. "Thank you for coming," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "The press conference, the public confession, stepping down as CEO. Why now?" "Because lies have a way of compounding," Connor said simply. "Each one requires another to support it. I was drowning in them. And the foundation? Is that just for show?" "No, it's for real. And I meant what I said. I want you to run it. Not as my employee, but as my equal. Your expertise, my resources." Intimate conversation after the press conference. Tension building as they acknowledged growing feelings. Standing in the dim parking garage, they were just Connor and Kiera again. Not co-parents, not business associates, not ex-lovers, but two people who had once dreamed together. "The boys asked if you're their daddy," Kiera said suddenly. Connor's breath caught. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you are." "And how did they take it?" "Marcus wanted to know why you were away so long. Mason wanted to know if you're staying." "What did you tell them?" "That the first question is a grown-up story for another time. And the second." She met his eyes directly. "I said I didn't know. What matters more? Maintaining a perfect image or embracing your authentic truth? Have you ever had to publicly own your mistakes?" As headlines about Connor's redemption tour flooded social media, Kiera received an unexpected visitor. Connor's ex-fiancée, makeup perfect despite red-rimmed eyes. "You think you know him now," she said, clutching an envelope similar to the one Kiera had delivered at the wedding. "But there's something about Connor Blake that even you don't know." The revelation inside would test everything Kiera thought she understood about forgiveness. 4 years ago, Connor Blake walked away from love because it didn't fit his image. Today, he stood before Kiera offering not just his name for their children, but his heart for her to judge worthy or wanting. The Atlanta rooftop where they'd once celebrated Connor's first investor meeting now hosted a different kind of negotiation. Not about business, but about whether two people who broke each other could build something stronger from the pieces. "I didn't expect to hear from you after Vanessa's visit," Connor said, hands in his pockets as he looked out over the skyline. Kiera leaned against the railing beside him, close but not touching. "I almost didn't call." The envelope Vanessa had delivered contained what she'd claimed was proof of Connor's continued dishonesty. Emails showing he'd known about Kiera's pregnancy earlier than he admitted, that he'd actively worked to hide from her. But the timestamps were wrong. The account addresses suspicious. When Kiera confronted Vanessa, the truth emerged. The evidence was fabricated, a last attempt to derail Connor's new life. "Why did you call then?" Connor asked, turning to face her. "Because running away when things get complicated is your move, not mine." Kiera met his gaze steadily. "And because the boys deserve parents who can at least talk to each other." 8 months had passed since the wedding disaster. 8 months of careful co-parenting, of Connor proving himself day after day, of the twins slowly accepting him as daddy rather than Connor. 8 months of Kiera watching the man who broke her heart transform into someone new. Or perhaps someone he'd always been beneath the ambition and fear. "I've been thinking about what you said at the press conference," Kiera said. "About privilege and choices. I meant every word. I know. That's why I'm here." She took a deep breath. "The foundation launches next month. I've accepted the director position." Connor's face brightened. "You have? I'm not finished," Kiera interrupted. "I've accepted the position because it's important work. Work I believe in. Not because of you. I understand." "Do you?" "Because I need to be clear about this. Whatever happens between us, whether we're just co-parents or something else, my career and my choices are my own. I won't be the woman behind the man again. Not even for you." Connor nodded slowly. "I wouldn't want that either. The woman beside the man is much more interesting." A smile tugged at Kiera's lips despite her resolve to remain serious. "That was smooth. I've had 8 months to think about what to say if you ever gave me another chance." "Is that what this is?" "I hope so." Connor took a step closer. "Because I've spent 4 years running from what scared me, and the past 8 months running toward what matters. And what matters, Kiera, is you. You and the boys." The physical connection between them had never truly died, just been buried under layers of hurt and betrayal. Now, standing close enough to feel the warmth of his body, Kiera felt the familiar pull. The chemistry that had drawn them together in this very spot years ago. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you again," Connor said softly. "But I can promise I'll never run from us again. Whatever challenges come, whatever mistakes I make, I'll face them with you, if you'll let me." Kiera studied his face. The face she saw every day in their son's eyes, in Marcus's determined frown, in Mason's cautious smile. The face that had once represented everything she wanted, then everything she hated, and now, something more complicated. "The boys need stability," she said. "They've just gotten used to you being their father. If we try this and it fails, it won't fail. You can't know that." "No, but I know I won't be the one to walk away." Connor reached for her hand, his touch tentative, giving her every opportunity to pull back. "I know what I lost once. I won't lose it again." As the twins raced around the rooftop garden, Connor reached for Kiera's hand. Not with the entitled confidence of the man who'd left her, but with the humble gratitude of someone being offered a second chance he hadn't earned. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he admitted, "but they deserve a father who stays, and you deserve a partner who sees your worth." Kiera's fingers interlaced with his, neither promising forever nor rejecting possibility. "Show me," she said simply. "Words abandoned me once. Actions are all I trust now." The journey ahead would be complicated, messy, and uncertain, but for the first time in 4 years, it would be honest. "Do you believe people can truly change? Can betrayal ever lead to something stronger? Or are some wounds too deep to fully heal? The sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Below them, the city where their story began pulsed with life and possibility. The same city where Connor had once told Kiera she was too hood for his rising star. The same city where she'd built a life without him, proving just how wrong he'd been. "We start slow," Kiera said finally, her fingers still entwined with his. "Dinner, movies, getting to know each other again. The people we are now, not who we were then." Connor's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way his polished CEO smiles never had. "I'd like that. And we tell the boys together. No secrets, no surprises." "Agreed." As they turned to leave, Kiera paused. "One more thing. If you ever disappear on us again, there won't be a third chance. I won't chase you, and I won't wait." "I wouldn't expect you to," Connor said. "The man who left you doesn't exist anymore." He couldn't survive seeing what he almost lost. The journey ahead would be complicated, messy, and uncertain, but for the first time in 4 years, it would be honest. If this story of betrayal, justice, and possible redemption resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more complex, emotional journeys that reflect real life. Tell me in the comments, do you think Kiera should give Connor another chance, or should some betrayals remain unforgivable? And remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about destroying someone else's happiness, but about building your own so completely that they can't help but witness what they lost.